What's up, guys? Joey here. So I've started a new game for Cyberpunk 2.0 because I want to experience all the changes and bug fixes and all that from scratch. And I've been testing with my RX 7900 XTX, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll wait for, some of the optimization guides that have been put up. And I was actually thoroughly disappointed at the lack of high-end attention to detail. And by high-end, I mean like if you're running a mid to high-range GPU at a standard, 1440p, the kind of resolution you'd actually run at, the optimization guides just gloss over very important details. They're just completely missed, or they kind of misrepresent what some of these settings actually do. So I want to get into that really quick and just go over a few of my own observations and how they compare. Like, if you probably watch the optimization guides, and you can just make like, don't just, if you've seen their recommendations and you just follow it, you may actually notice these things straight away as well, because I believe the areas they test in are very isolated in terms of how the game can look and how bad it can look in different environments. And you're not spending most of the game indoors. You actually, there's a lot of, it's open world, so there's a lot of areas where if you follow their settings, some stuff just looks garbage because of those settings. And yeah, you may want to gain some FPS, but the sacrifice in performance can be worth it if certain visuals bother you a lot. Like, I cannot stand grainy reflections, like the grain, sand grain. That comes with lowering screen space reflection quality. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do that with a high-end card, but even if I was on my old 6700 XT, I liked Ultra, and if I could have ran Psycho, I would have for screen space reflections. And if you're on an NVIDIA GPU, a mid-range GPU, and you're following this optimization guide, they still recommend turning screen space reflections down in favor of performance over visuals. Now, let me just show you really quick the settings I'm running. So you can see here, quality Intel Xe super sampling, and that's because for non-RTX users, this is the best option, because there is foliage in the game. There's a lot of desert scenes as well. And for some reason, Super Resolution 2.1 is bugged. It's bugged with foliage. It just the foliage just has a lot of artifacting and dancing, and basically the shadowing, or I don't know what it is, ambient occlusion on foliage as it moves in the wind. The FSR has not been optimized for it, and XE super sampling has. And I'll show you that in a bit. But long story short, I've got everything cranked, but I'm not using Psycho SSR because I use ray traced reflections, because that eliminates all of the grain completely at better performance, even on the AMD GPU. If I do turn it off and leave this on Psycho, you can see that, like, this is just a random building that I'm at. You can see that there's like a glossy reflection there. That looks fine. There's not actually a street sign because the SSR is fake. But a lot of reflections in the game are not, without RTX enabled, a lot of reflective surfaces are cube map. They're not actually like even representing whatever is across from them. Like, they're not proper. They're just cube map reflections, as in static reflections to make the windows look like they have some kind of reflection in them, but they're not actually accurate at all to anything. And changing SSR does not actually adjust some of these cube maps. So these, I believe, are cube map reflections, and you can see the reflection is just warehouses on the other side, and there are none. Okay. Now, the thing with these cube maps is that if I lower the SSR down to medium, which is one of the recommended tweaks, it does nothing. Okay, so that's not a big deal. That's expected. But when you follow these guides and then you go into like you're in a narrow corridor, no issue, like you can kind of live with it. But then you get somewhere that is an SSR reflection, and that is, and it's funny because it's actually, because it's actually really similar. Like, you'd think those are also cube map, right? Well, when I get to this distance, they're no longer cube mapped. They're cube map up close, kind of. Like, it's hard to tell completely, but there is some um, funny business going on at certain distances. Like, there is a reflection in there that is SSR, like whatever that is. That could be like a reflection of a Like it's a cube map with a reflection on it. Does that make sense? Like that's a wire or a cable or something. You can see it. It's like this shadow, and if I zoom in, it disappears. And as I'm walking around, I can see it, and it looks like sand grain. Like you can just see all the sand. Now, if I turn this up, and this is where they say don't use it, like they say it's worth the, it's worth banking the performance. But if I turn that up to ultra, you can see how much finer that reflection looks. Like it's still got lines in it and stuff, but that looks more like a natural, like the glass is just doing that effect, like it's like a weird type of glass. So like the glass type of reflection just does that, right? But it's not sandy looking. It's like a lot finer. So as I walk around, I don't know there's nothing there on the other side, but it looks kind of cool, almost like I'm looking into an apartment complex or something. I don't know what they put in there, or it could be the internals of the building. I'm like looking through it and seeing up through the roof of the building, which is a possibility actually. I can't tell, but in other words, it just looks better, right? That is the effect of just running ultra, okay? And if I uncap the FPS, now this is on a higher end system, but I'm at 3440 by 1440. Now, if I uncap the FPS on ultra, I'm at 100, okay? And if I put it down to medium, which is recommended, like optimized, back to horrible sand grain. And this is especially bad on some surfaces, like where you're actually walking in town and there's mirror type surfaces, glass. It'll have this, and also on the roofs of cars and everything gets this sand grain effect. And you can see I gain like 20 FPS. That's great. But on a weaker system, like on my 6700 XT, medium was also around 20 FPS, but it's like 80 versus 60ish. And when you're playing it like a lock 60, it doesn't matter if you have an extra 20 FPS in the tank, because there's no point running necessarily 80 if it always dips in intensive scenes. So you at least you can be more aware of what this setting is doing, because you can see here the hood of this car. Look at the grain. That's medium screen space reflections, and they don't even really go into a detailed explanation. So if you copy this optimization guide, you'll think the game looks decent based on what you're used to, but you may not realize which setting is actually causing this sand grainy reflection on the roof of the car. And you can see it really clearly at higher resolutions, which is where a mid-range, ultra-wide 1440p monitor with a mid to high-range GPU is a very realistic combination. You may be on an ultra-wide at 14, or even just normal 1440p, right? With a 4060, 4070 Ti, 6700 XT, 6800 XT, and you follow this guide and put it on medium, and you get sand grain. And they don't even really mention that how bad this sand grain looks. It bothers me a heck of a lot. Some people might just be like, oh, that's just how the reflections are in the game. They don't care. Fine. If you want like an extra 20 FPS, definitely just run it on medium. Okay, if you need that performance, if you're running mid to low range GPU. Okay, but if you want to get rid of this sand grain that you can see on the roof of the cars, I move the camera around certain angles, also on the hood. Some cars are way worse than others too. Then turning this screen space reflections up will alleviate it somewhat. So we'll go to high. You can see it's a little bit finer, but still very noticeable. And then ultra. Definitely much less noticeable. Like it looks more like a real reflection, because the grain of this reflection is much finer. Okay, and I'll see if I can find a card that actually highlights it more. Some card, and the sun, even the sun can really make it stand out. When you go like under a certain part of lighting where the sun's hitting it, you can see all the grain appear, right? And this is even on ultra, but if you're just like wondering, is this the optimized setting? What's the optimized setting for my GPU? Test your FPS and, try to get it as high as you can while capping your FPS to something reasonable. So even on my 7900 XTX, for this resolution, because I want good visuals, because there's a trade-off, right? Like, yeah, I've got a high-end card, but do I want the best visuals, or do I want the highest FPS, or do I want to balance of both? And for me, it's the highest playable FPS with the best visuals. So even though I would love to have 160 FPS because I'm on 165 hertz, removing the grain and making the image quality really, really good is worth it, even if I have to drop down to 60 FPS. Like I would drop from 120 to 60 for a better looking game. And And you can see here that once I turn that to Psycho, now that grain it's still there on the roof of the car, but it is much finer, and you can kind of ignore it almost because it's. And look, we're still at 100 FPS on this GPU. It's pretty awesome. Psycho screen space reflections, and you know it is a performance killer though. If you're on weaker hardware, definitely don't run Psycho. And I do have upscaling on quality mode, not ultra quality for Intel Xe. You can get a little bit more performance out of super resolution, but when you are in the deserts and near any plants, you're going to see shimmering and shadows, and the plants just start having this black shadowy effect, like they just move a lot, and it's really noisy. But I'll show that after. So anyway, with this particular setup, I choose everything max except crowd density. And the reason for that is crowd density is bugged when combined with certain settings. And also, it's just not immersive, even though they say it's more immersive. Yes, it's nice to have your game world full of NPCs. No, it's not when there's a lot of copy pasting going on. So if you go to some parts of Night City, you will literally see, especially if you turn on slow HDD mode. I don't recommend turning this on. This really ruins immersion. If you have to turn it on, make sure you turn your crowd density down, because you're going to see like 6 of the same NPCs spawning in the same spot. And I actually witnessed that, like 6 of the same exact child model spawned near the first mission, and they were all just walking after each other with this turned on and then crowd density on high. And when I turned it down to medium and reloaded the same scene, it was less, and there was a little. It looked like there's more variety because there was less with the same, less duplicates, and so it looks like there's more individual models. And now, if you turn this off, it's fine, but at the same time, you still will see the odd duplicate, and it's just like immersion breaking for me. Okay, so aside from that, I do run RTX, so I get about 100 FPS. This is just a little bit of a quick benchmark for you guys wondering about the performance on my setup. You can see that the GPU's 98, 99, whatever. I get around 100 FPS at these settings. This is Psycho screen space reflections, but again, I do not like the grain on the roof of cars. It bothers me a lot. You can see this fine grain there. It's nowhere near as bad as medium, which is horrible. And just before I turn on the RTX, I will show you medium again. This is the recommended optimized setting. And he doesn't really point out that if you got like even a mid to high range GPU should run higher than medium. Don't run medium if you got like a 4070 or better. Okay, now you can see the grain now on the roof of the car. It's just crap. Anyway, beyond Psycho. So Psycho by itself, 100 FPS. This scene, I won't move the camera. So 98 FPS with this grain. And then RT reflections only, 70 FPS. So we lose about 20 FPS. And it's weird. There's like a shadowy type grain, but it's a more natural type of grain. It doesn't look like little dots as much. And then the aliasing is from upscaling. That's not actually anything to do with reflections. You can see if I move it a little bit fast, there is a little bit of noise going on there. But for me, as you go through the game world, you'll find it's just much better. You'll get more natural reflections. But they also say in the optimization guides that Psycho SSR is bad and RTX performs better. That's only on NVIDIA cards. As you can see, I was running like 90 FPS, around 20 FPS higher without the RTX. So even for me, this is a tough call. Because on one hand, I can cap at 60 if 60 is my target, and it doesn't matter if I use RTX or Psycho, right? But on the other hand, the temps are higher, everything's just a little bit noisier, and if I just disable the RTX, Psycho's still pretty good and definitely runs much better, like the rasterized SSR. And so if I uncap that, and also that can lead to differences in gameplay when you're actually in combat and stuff, having an extra 20 FPS in the tank, actually it's 30 FPS, is definitely nice to have. So when you have like heavy combat going on, you're not going to get as much FPS drop, even if you're capped at 60, compared like 98 FPS capped to 60 is going to have more utilization headroom for intensive scenes than 68 FPS cap to 60, where you're still up at 90 something percent usage. Okay, so just again, I'll just show you the usage: 62% at 60 FPS. And if I turn on RTX, I'm going to keep the FPS capped, and this disables the standard rasterize, so just ignore that it's still on Psycho. If I turn that back on, and now you can see we're up at 75, so we're about 10 around 10%, a little bit under 10% utilization higher, and the FPS is definitely much lower when we uncap. Yeah, 68 FPS versus like 98 FPS, 82% uncapped. And it's also interesting. It seems like an optimization issue too with RTX, with not RTX, but with ray tracing. When I disable it, so we were at 78% uncapped utilization with RTX, and now we're at 98%. We're using more of the GPU for the higher frames, and we're still uncapped. So RTX doesn't fully utilize the AMD GPU. That could also just be due to the architecture. Makes sense. Ray tracing doesn't fully utilize on the AMD GPU, or maybe they can optimize it better to utilize the card better somehow. But interesting. But yeah, you can also see the temps climbing up, running uncapped. And when you look at the not the 0.1, that's not that important, but when you look at the 1% lows, if they're around 80, capping to 60 is not going to hurt, or even just capping to 80 when you've got that much spare in the tank. Capping to 80 can give a much more consistent experience. As you can see the frame time graph, it's closer to like that console experience. Even if I'm hitting stuff and, you know, driving around being silly. So yeah, I wanted to point that out there. And then the other thing I will show you, one of my observations, that they don't really, because they don't touch on upscaling, even though everyone's going to use upscaling almost to get playable performance for some of these settings. So this is just a random scene in a warehouse. Like I did not choreograph or plan this out, but just to show that you can just be in the middle of the city or in the warehouse district and you can come across this. Now, this is the FSR bug, or lack of optimization, I should say. If I turn FSR to quality, which is the best mode, and it doesn't matter what the image sharpening setting is on, just having this FSR enabled does this to foliage. Now, it may not seem obvious at first, but just stare at the grass, especially in the distance, and you'll notice noise, like a lot more movement. And if I walk further back, you can just see it almost shimmering. It's like a shimmer. And if it's a bushy type of grass, like not this type of, you know, not this type of grainy grass, whatever it is, if I can find a bush somewhere, I don't know if I can, you can kind of see it here, like you can just see the edges of the grass having a lot more noise. But I need a bush. Can I fast travel to a bush? There's probably a bush up here somewhere. Like they'll have some scenery. Any type of like shrubbery is enough to show the issue. But it's better. It's even worse when it's green. So I'm trying to like look for a green. Oh, maybe up there. There's like a tree thing. I don't know if that's the exact type of real foliage because it could be more static. Oh no, it's doing it. Yeah. So if I go here, look at the leaves. There's like the shadows. FSR is like trying to upscale the shadowing, contact shadows, whatever it is, on the leaves, and it does this weird effect. Like you can see it just shimmering and sizzling. Okay, even the grass down at the bottom is doing it, and over there that little distant piece of grass. But you can just see how bad that is. And the reason I know it's not normal is because if we turn all upscaling off, that's how it should look. Like it's moving in the thing, but the shadowy part, I'm not talking about like lack of movement, it's supposed to move, but the shadows, the black parts, are not meant to move as obviously, if that makes sense. So you can still tell the grass is moving, there might be a bit of wind there, it looks natural, but it's not dancing the way it was. Anywhere near as bad. Okay. And then I'll turn that back on. You can just, it's way more obvious now when you go from off to on. It's like It's almost like the sand grain effect is dancing on the leaves. So that's why I recommend Intel Xe. So when I turn on Intel Xe, even on the quality mode, it's around 10 FPS lower versus FSR quality. But now look, still moving in the wind, but way more stable. Okay, so that's why I use Intel Xe. Just wanted to share that. The guides, the optimization guides, don't even talk about the upscaling properly. And it's weird too because you will, like with upscaling, you will get weird stuff like straight edges will have more shimmer, more like you'll see more movement on certain edges. FSR handles those way better, like buildings and stuff, but not foliage. And then Intel Xe also has the same problem. There's like some stuff will seem a little bit less stable, but comparing the two, the foliage difference is the deal breaker for me. Like I don't mind if like I'm walking and out of the corner of my eye I can see a bit of this post shimmering. Like you can see it's like shimmering here. That that can happen on both upscaling methods, but the grass is the bigger deal. Like the grass, you'll like, especially you go out in the desert and see the green type of bushes that are much bigger, they all shimmer. Like the entire desert shimmers and sizzles. And when you use Intel Xe, it'll just be stable like that. Like no weirdness. Okay. So I just wanted to share that. Those are the two biggest, not optimizations, the two biggest observations I made with the optimized settings guides is regardless of unless you're running a lower range GPU, if you are on like ultra wide or 1440p or higher, and you're running like a decent card, don't overlook screen space reflections as something that is just for performance and like it's not noticeable. It is definitely noticeable, especially in some parts of the game and hoods of cars and stuff. That sand grain effect, some people really hate it. I'm one of them. Is really magnified on medium. Even on high, you can see it. So if you can run ultra and you lose a bit of FPS, but you can still maintain like 60, even someone running a much stronger GPU has the same preference. I'll just run a slightly higher setting, but if I was on my old card, I would still pick ultra and run upscaling just to get rid of a lot of that sand graininess because the graininess will still be removed even when you use upscaling. It's just medium with upscaling just is horrible. There's just too much sand. So sharing that, and I'll also do a second video on the mod that I updated because I could not play the game. I came back to Phantom Liberty, like, I was playing modded Cyberpunk before this, on and off, when I have free time. And coming back to the vanilla game with all the mods disabled, I actually found driving to be just as horrible as it ever was in terms of fine control. It just sucks. They didn't improve it in terms of being able to modulate your speed without like having a steering wheel and a pedal. Like if you like buy a steering wheel and pedal package, that's probably the only way you could drive in this game without a controller to modulate your speed on keyboard and mouse. So you need to have the steering wheel set up somewhere and then you switch over to it. And my mod that I ran in the old Cyberpunk doesn't work anymore until they update Red 4 extension and input loader. And because those two still aren't up to date, there's another method which is where you just directly edit the game files. And since I've updated to 2.0, I was able to just do that method and get it working for myself. And then I shared that method, the manual file edits, on Nexus Mod, so you can just do the same thing. You can just copy it over. The downside is if you customize any of your inputs, your key bindings, like see all this customization here, it all gets reset with my changes. So if you've changed like WSAD to something else, I don't know, you might have changed something to your preference. It's going to reset to default once you implement my changes, and then I'm not 100% sure what happens then if you re-edit it. So if you add your keybind back, then I don't know if that'll stop my mod working. It might replace it back to the vanilla version of the XML file. I haven't extensively tested it. All I know is my mod works, but it'll reset your keys to default along with it. So then my extra changes will work, but then yeah, your custom changes will be reset. So just back up your file, and I'll link that in the description below. I'll also do a video showcasing it in 2.0. Just to show the difference because yeah, I was like driving and finding it really hard, and also just walking, like see the speed of these NPCs. If I just use W, I'll easily walk past him, and you can't really chill and take in the sights as much. Or sometimes you're doing a mission or you want to just go really slowly, and you can't. Like it's just like one speed for everything, and that also annoyed me with walking. Um, and I also implemented into those files, if you want to download with the immersive driving with walking, then you can walk this slow. So default is like this. This is default. Okay. A little bit slower than that is default. And then I can go slower. Okay, going up this hill. And then I can go even slower. See how slow I'm walking? And then I can also sprint. You know, it adds a bit more. Like I think there's a normal sprint in the game, but it's just like not the same. It's not the same. Okay, I can even go straight from a sprint to a walk. So you might also find that that additional file interesting. It's the same file though. Like if you install the immersive walking version or the without walking version, it'll just replace the same input file. So it'll just automatically one or the other. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to put two files in or conflict or anything. Okay, so this is dragged on a little bit. As far as thoughts on the game so far, I just wanted to go over the combat real quick. I'll just reload that checkpoint I had. Where was my quick save? Here. Here. No, here. I saw people complaining about the combat. I think they've definitely improved it. They've made it more realistic. You can headshot now, and it does good damage to the average NPCs that aren't wearing, you know, helmets and extensive body armor. Average police do not wear bulletproof helmets or anything like that. So yeah, it's way better. The combat is way better. So I'll just find some enemies around here somewhere. I'm pretty sure there's some down here at this warehouse. Where was I? Up here. And I also saw people saying the difficulty scaling is not there. I've got it on very hard, okay? And as long as you're not going past like out in the desert to some high-end area where, you know, there's really powerful NPCs and turrets and stuff. If you're just doing the average content that matches your character, like your progression in the game, and you're not skipping stuff, um, very hard is nice for a first-person shooter. Wouldn't say veteran, but someone experienced with shooters. Okay, you have to take cover more, and that's probably the biggest thing. If you just stand out in the open and try to face tank them, you'll get dropped. You'll take a lot of damage and you'll lose. But if you just play like normal, like play like a cover-based shooter, it is so much better than before because you'll actually, you know, you need the cover to not immediately lose. Like if you just stand here, if I try to take these two down and just stood there, you can see how quickly I took damage, right? I'm down to 98. Now if I take cover, it's more useful because I don't want to take heavy damage, right? So you see that damage I'm taking. If I'm out of cover, I will take way more. So, see how quickly I got dropped. Okay, now I'll do it properly. So load last checkpoint. Hopefully it goes to the quick save and not to the auto save. And oh no, yeah, it did go to the quick save. Okay, so this is actually a random encounter down here. I remember doing it on my initial playthrough. So I'm quickly going to do this. I don't want the video to go longer than 30 minutes. I just want to explain the sand grain thing and the you know, the stability of grass. And I'll just double check that I actually set the settings right. Yes, it's correct. So I'm just running Psycho RT. And I'll uncap it just so you can see what the combat uncap looks like. I mean, on this system. But more importantly, I just want to show the very hard gun combat, and I'm using, like, I have not done any weird edits. I'm just using default stuff that I found this on the enemies back there that I just beat. Well, nearby to where I just beat. This gun was on the ground under a car, and this is the Dying Knight that you get at the start of the game. Okay, it's not that strong. I haven't upgraded it or put any attachments on it yet. Do I have any attachments? No. And wait, what's my level? Sorry, I should also go over that. My character I put into reflexes 9, and then I'm going into slippery, and I'm actually going to be doing more melee type combat, so like katana, because it's got bullet deflection, all that cool stuff. So, which does work too. Like even with the higher damage on very hard, you can do close combat. You just have to be careful with it. how you do it. So anyway, so now this is how you do the encounter. Taking cover. Aim at the head, and this is like an automatic system. It's weird. And you can see in cover, I haven't taken much damage. Oh, there's a grenade. And you know, you use your heals because even if you go to 0, it'll recharge. Signed and delivered. So there's one down. One down, big dog. And this one's gonna try to melee me. Oh, pulling out the weapon. But look how easily they're like, you take more damage, but they also take more damage, and they get staggered when they get hit. So as long as you're hitting them, especially in its 1v1, it's actually fairly easy. Like there's another guy up here. So now that's not like, you know, when they're like that, that's the time you can kind of face tank them when there's only one of them. But cover still makes a world of difference. So yeah, that's very hard combat. Like, got some progression here, you know, some loot. Fairly easy, in my opinion. And if I redo that encounter, I don't want to redo the encounter, to be honest. Using a gun like this, you can even... Actually, I don't even know if I can tag, because this is not my old build. What you could do with these power weapons before in the vanilla, like in the original release, is you can tag with the scan, like ping, and if you ping, you can see through all the walls and stuff. And you can headshot through most walls. So I'll see if I can find some enemies somewhere else to ping. Oh, here's some of those bushes. Those horrible bushes. These actually don't even look that great on quality for XE. If I turn it to quality FSR, now you can see all that movement I was talking about. See all the shadowy, grainy, it's like grass shadows movement that you can see. Grass contact shadows or whatever they are, and the further you are away, the more they move around. It's so bad. So I'm not talking about the plants just moving in the wind, I'm talking about the weird dancing shadow thing effect on the bushes. And for some reason, Intel XE just handles it way better. Just tiny, you know. Like there are shadows there, but they're not moving around like crazy. I can turn that up a bit, it'll be even finer. Ultra quality, and the FPS is still very reasonable. So without RTX, I'd actually recommend ultra quality Intel upscaling, and then with RTX, if you're going to use RTX reflections, then you have to go down to quality just to keep playable FPS with this hardware. But at lower resolutions on weaker hardware, it would probably work out roughly the same. Like you could have a similar trade-off. Where's some enemies? I wanted to show this very. This weapon is awesome. I'm not gonna find it here. Okay, I'll leave it for another video. Unless, wait, in here, it's a door. Give me a sec. I took out these guys up here, and then they had friends nearby, I'm pretty sure. Nothing here.
Watch yourself.
Like they have a hangout. The bad guys. Maybe I've already cleared this area and they don't spawn. I'll just cap that FPS because it's like the temps are great. Don't get me wrong, but it's just unnecessary to run uncapped all the time. Oh, and one other thing, if you're running an AMD GPU and you have the, like I'm on the latest I'm on 23.9.3 drivers. Literally, they just released today with Phantom Liberty's support, 23.9.3. If you're running an AMD GPU, now this is weird because like if you've been watching this video, you probably already clicked off, and a lot of people are going to miss this. I need to do like a dedicated video to this. You cannot just go off your hotspot temp and expect that your temps are okay, because the hotspot temp, GPU hotspot in the AMD sensors is only for the GPU die. So my temps may look great, 57, which actually is very good for a capped FPS and a slight underclock, which is closer to the stock reference frequency, not the AIB frequency, which is too high and causes a large gap. And I've got a really aggressive fan curve. But this is not your hottest point on your GPU. The hottest point on your GPU depends on whichever sensor and whichever model of card you have, because when you install the latest version of hardware info, so 7.62 5200 is the build I'm on, you can actually see how many sensors there are on the card. There's like memory sensors for each individual memory chip, and more importantly, there's a memory junction temperature. And if you look closely, my memory junction is at 70C added into the RTS overlay, while my hotspot is at 56C. So that's over 10C delta difference with the two temperatures. So this is important because if you're running stock fan profile and you're asking, is my temps okay? Like you go on Reddit, I'm running at 80C, is that okay? Other people are like, yeah, I'm on 80C too, it's normal, blah, blah, blah. Your temperature's at 90C, or if you're pushing 85C, your temperature's at your memory junction could be at 95C or higher, because I'm also on a Nitro Plus model card, and you might be on a slightly lower, like a slightly worse cooled card, slightly cheaper model, and your memory could be up at 100C. You wouldn't even know, and it'll just be causing like FPS drops and things like that. And more importantly, degrading the lifespan of your card, because if the memory fails, you start getting all sorts of issues. So, and that has happened. Like we've had RTX cards fail because of memory overheating. So just want to put this out there. If you happen to skip to the end of the video and you find this, install hardware info and double check your memory junction temps. Do not just go off the Radeon software hotspot temp, because that's only for the GPU die, not for the entire PCB. So you can see we've also got like a VRM temperature and stuff. Those are perfectly fine. Sorry about that sound. But yeah, just more importantly, you need that memory junction check. So just run it in the background for a quick and easy way to check it. Install hardware info, latest build, run it in the background, play a game for 30 minutes or 15, 30 minutes, uncap FPS or cap at whatever your normal settings are, and then at the end, open up hardware info and it'll have under the max column. It won't be all colored like mine. Like I've done this so I can see stuff better, but it's all just white by default. And just scroll down to the bottom, because I've got little sensors for everything else. Scroll down all the way to the GPU at the bottom and look for your memory junction temperature and make sure it's not overheating. And because if you just start it up and you only play for a few minutes and you alt tab to hardware info, that's not enough time for everything to reach its optimal operating temperature. So if you check and it's like, oh yeah, it's 60C, and you only tested for 5 minutes, you just like alt tabbed out, even alt tabbing will drop the temperature. As you can see now, we're at 68, although it has been running a while, so it's fine, and I'm running windowed, so it's okay. But if I was in full screen mode and I alt tabbed, I would see an immediate temp drop. Okay, so just be aware of that. You need to run it in the background and actually play for a while and to get an accurate temp reading. And now you can see here what my temps are like. Now anyway, I was hoping I'd find some hostiles. If not, I'll end the video here. It's already pushing 40 minutes. Oh, here. I'll just do this real quick. So do I have a ping? I haven't unlocked it. I'm still at the start of the game, eh? Like I haven't actually... I've got a few levels just free roaming. This is my 1.6 level 2 set level. That's my old save. This is okay. I don't have ping. I need to get it from that mission where you go in. I think it's actually in next. It's not far from here. It's somewhere nearby. Anyway, if you have ping and you have a power weapon, I'm not sure. I haven't been able to test. I want to test, but you used to be able to just wall people, wall the enemies like through objects and all sorts of stuff, because these power weapons are really strong at the start of the game. So 2 shots. Let's see if I can hit her through the car. And you can see how much the cover is making a difference. Like, it never really used to matter that much before, taking cover, but now it can be like easy versus hard in terms of very hard combat. I want them to be behind something that's easier to hit, shoot through. Maybe here. Can I shoot through the corner of this? Oh yeah, exactly. It's behind the barrel. Okay. So as long as I know where he is, I'll try to shoot him through the... Did she just... Okay, I didn't get to show my thing. Maybe I need a sniper rifle. I know the high-powered sniper rifles could definitely wall people. I'm not sure if they changed the dynamics of the game, like the bullet penetration and stuff, to see if we could actually do that. That was an interesting encounter anyway. What are they doing here? Robbing someone. Was that the first one I took out? Yeah, it is. Okay, well, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next update. I'll be showcasing immersive driving. I'll just quickly take these guys out. It is on very hard still. Quick save. So yeah, about the grenades also make a big difference too. Like if I throw a grenade, it turns it into a cakewalk because of the stun. Like they can't do anything. Once you get into close combat, they'll also try to close combat back. So this one's red. Like he's a hard enemy. Still able to beat him with a couple of heals. Thankfully your heals regen though, so it's pretty epic. Like you don't end up handicapped that, oh yeah, you just had a fight, now you can't do combat anymore. You got to run to some vendor to look for a heal. It just recharges one heal, or charges of the heal recharge, I should say. Which is a nice change, because before you had to like always be carrying it. Anyway, that was easy. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.